Hi, this is Elizabeth, author of the Modern Fae series, and I am back to do a writing tag video. Yes! I've been so excited to do this tag video, and I've been putting it off and putting it off, but I have my notebook with questions written down in it, and I am going to dive right in. So this is the writing process tag video. I will put down in the comments who the original person was if I can find them. But generally, this has been kind of going around AuthorTube, and I wanted to take a stab at it because I've just spent the last 2 months writing a first draft of a novel. So I thought now would be a great time to talk a little bit about my writing process. So let's go. The first question, by the way, there are 20 questions, so this video may be a little bit long. I'll try to keep my answers as brief as possible. What genres do you write in? Okay, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I write fantasy. My series, the Modern Fae series, is fantasy romance, and I also write science fiction, although I don't have anything published yet in science fiction. I'm still working on a story that I will talk about probably in future months. Question 2 is, what setting gets you the most productive? Setting. I would say that I am most productive when I have a time constraint and I'm trying to write and I am not home. So a couple of places that I've been really productive, airports, on the ferry going back and forth between the islands or to Anacortes, which is the closest major city on the mainland to here. That's been really productive for me when I go to a coffee shop and write when I've only got a couple of hours to get something done. If my time is constrained and I'm in a location where I don't have any other sort of distractions around me, like household chores, or I don't have connection to the internet, that's the thing that's going to get me most productive. Question 3 is, if you have multiple story ideas, how do you go about picking which one to start first? Great question. I have a lot of story ideas going on at the same time. They're all kind of in different states of, fermentation in my brain. So I think first is which one I feel like has a deadline or which one I want to get out first. And if I don't have a deadline looming, like for example, right now, I've just finished book 3. I'm working on another little project in the Modern Fae world, but I'm not quite ready to start book 4 yet. When I don't have a deadline, usually what I decide to do is pick the story that I know the most about, that I have the most planning done around. And right now, looking across all the stories that I have, the one story that is like nagging at my brain that really wants to be written, the one that I know the most about, is this science fiction novel that I'm going to work on during National Novel Writing Month in November. Okay, yes, I'm excited about National Novel Writing Month, and yes, you're going to be hearing a lot about it. Sorry, not sorry. Question 4, do you outline? Yes, obviously. I think we've talked about this before. Yes, I outline. Yes, I'm terrible about actually finishing an outline before I actually start writing. It's a problem. So I'm working on it. But yeah, I totally outline before I start writing. Question 5 is, do you start your first draft with pen and paper, on a typewriter, or on a computer? I start my first draft in Scrivener on my computer. So I like to take a lot of notes and do a lot of brainstorming in pen and paper, usually in a notebook, but I transfer all of that over to Scrivener before I get started writing a project, and I don't actually write any scenes until I'm sitting down and ready to open up Scrivener and create a new file and get started. So I've created a template for myself in Scrivener, which outlines chapters for a dual point of view book, and I also have one that outlines chapters for a not dual point of view book. And I break out the scenes according to a beat sheet that I like to use, which I'll link to in the description. The one that I've used for a long time is Jamie Gold's beat sheet, which I think has been around the internet for a long time. Recently, I opened up the Save the Cat Writes a Novel book and started reading it and found that really helpful. And then I also just recently read Romancing the Beat, which was kind of like Save the Cat, but it adapts that kind of Save the Cat thought process into romance specifically. So I've been trying to play around with a beat sheet that combines all three of those things, elements of all three of those things, to give myself a way to create that Scrivener file, the scenes in the Scrivener file. And in the little cards on the side, what I'll put is what happens in the scene, what the main character's goal is in that scene, or what the point of view character's goal is in that scene. And then what the conflict is, like what's preventing them from getting that goal. And then there's a thing that they always talk about in writing excuses: yes, but, no, and. So I'll always do goal, conflict, and then yes, but, no, and. So I'll pick which one it's going to be. Either yes, they achieve some portion of their goal, but something dramatic happens that makes things harder or different than they thought, or I'll go with no, they did not achieve their goal and things got worse in some way. So that's there's a lot of birds around me. I don't know if you can see them in my video or not. There's a woodpecker up there. Just in case you can hear that on the video. Yeah, so I use that to outline my scenes, and then I also have in the notes section what the beat is that's supposed to be happening in that scene. And I put word count goals in each of the scenes based off of the word count breakdown in that Jamie Gold beat sheet, which I've also added aspects of Save the Cat and Romancing the Beat to, and broken into more steps than are in her original sheet. But the nice thing I like about that is you can put in your target word count for the novel, and then it will give you kind of per scene, it will calculate out based off of where the scenes happen in the novel. So, inciting incident at 20%, and 20% of 70,000 words is X number of words, so that's going to happen at this portion of the novel. So that gives me kind of a sense as I'm writing. It keeps me on track so that I'm not getting too wordy, and that I know that if I'm not being wordy enough, that I probably need to flesh this out a little bit more. So I go back to my notebook and figure that out. All right. Oh my gosh, we're only on question 6. What do you do to get through writer's block? It depends. Depends on what's causing the writer's block, honestly. For me, usually there's either I can't write words because I'm stuck on a bit of world building or a character arc that I haven't quite figured out yet, in which case I'll stop and go to my notebook and just start brainstorming for a while, or I'll go for a walk or go for a run or go swimming or something that I can do with my body and let my brain just kind of churn on it. So no headphones or podcasts or music or whatever, just like let my brain think about the problem while I'm moving. So that usually helps to get me out of it and figure it out, and then I'll write down whatever solution I came up with and then get to writing again. Alternatively, I'll just try to force my way through it. Like, I'll just sit down and say, okay, all I've got to do is write 100 words. If I write 100 words, I'll be done for the day. And then the problem usually comes in when I've done a couple of days of that in a row, and then I know that something's up, and so then I have to resort back to option 1, which is like go move and think, or just sit down and stream of consciousness, write some stuff until you figure out what the problem is, what's blocking you, and what it needs to be. But usually it comes down to either I haven't figured out the world enough, or I haven't figured out the character arc enough, or what the character's motivation is, or what their flaw is, just like some aspect of the character that I haven't quite dialed in yet, or that isn't quite working with the story, so that I can figure out I have to figure out what that is before I can move forward. Okay, question 7. Do you format your project from the beginning or worry about it later? Formatting for me happens in a series of different phases. Initially, I let Scrivener do all the formatting for me, and I don't really mess with the formatting at all. I compile it and take the output, and then I throw that output into Google Docs so that I can edit it and then share it with my alpha readers and beta readers, and they can provide comments in Google Docs. When I do that, I'll change the chapter headings to be actual headings so that there's an outline on the side and little stuff like that. Add make sure that the page numbers are happening correctly, or that the header is just the way that I want it to be. But all of that's going to change ultimately for me once I have to go and format the final product because I'm indie publishing these books, and I'm actually doing all of my own book formatting. So it takes me, like, I have to actually go and take that file and then put it into an EPUB and with a format that my husband had originally created for the first one, and then just kind of adapt it for future books. Okay, question 8. Do you edit as you go or when you're finished with the first draft? This one's easy. I wait till I'm done with the first draft. I might go back and like add a few things here and there or reread what I wrote the day before, but I don't edit really at all substantially until I am done with the draft and export it to Google Docs, and then I work on it then. Question 9 is, after finishing your drafts, how long do you give a break? How long do you give it a break before editing? Okay, it depends. In the past, I've taken longer breaks between finishing a draft and editing. This time, I'm actually taking a really short break. I took a few days off at the start of the month just to let my brain rest, and now I'm diving into editing actually this week, as I've been editing, and I will probably be editing for the rest of the week. That's my plan. Hopefully, I will get it done by the end of the week, but it depends on how fast I can move through it. So yeah, usually a little bit longer, but this time I'm going with a short break. Question 10. Is there something you prefer to do to get you through writing? Sometimes if I'm feeling especially not motivated, putting on music will help. Usually a soundtrack that is somewhat applicable to whatever it is that I'm writing. Some soundtracks that I really like are the soundtracks to the new Star Trek movies, the one with Chris Pine, and also the soundtrack to the Dune miniseries from the Sci-Fi Channel, which was like, I don't know, I think it came out in the late 90s or something like that, or maybe early 2000s. But I really like that soundtrack too. It's really good. If you haven't checked out the Dune and Children of Dune miniseries that was on Sci-Fi, and you can find them on the internet somewhere, I highly recommend them. They're really good if you like the Frank Herbert novels, so definitely check those out. I like them way better than the original Dune movie. TBD on what they do with this new thing. I'm not holding my breath. I don't have high hopes, but the casting looks good, so we'll see. I don't know. Anyway, total sidebar. Let's talk about question 11. Do you schedule your writing sessions? No. I've tried, and I mean, because everybody says, schedule your writing sessions and then sit down and do the writing when you say you're going to do the writing. And I've tried, and it doesn't work for me. Yeah, no, sorry. Question 12. Do you have a word count goal or chapter goals for your writing sessions? Yes, but it varies depending on what my time horizon is for what it is that I'm writing. In Nano, obviously, I'm trying to write about 1,700 words a day. That's the plan. During camp, I'm setting my own goals, so it really just depends on how long I want to take writing a novel. I find that if I tell myself that I'm going to have to write more than 1,000 words, then I freak out in my head and I procrastinate because I get like somehow worried that I'm not going to be able to sit down and make that many words happen, and so like put it off, and then I just can't do it. So I like to try to think that it's either 1,000 words or like less than 1,000 words, like somewhere between 500 and 1,000 words. But ideally, I'd like to get about 1,000 words when I sit down. That's my plan. And most days when I'm writing. So what my goal over July and August has been, I think I will continue to do things that way because it worked really well, where I spread it out over 62 days, so 31 days of July and 31 days of August, and ended up writing about 66,000 words during that time. So on average, a little over 1,000 words a day, but I didn't write every day. So that seemed to work pretty well for me. I think I wrote maybe like 45 days out of the 62. So yeah, I think that works pretty well for me, and I think I'm going to try it again next time because it's about right. Question 13. Are there any quirky things you do to make writing projects more fun? Yeah, sort of. So one thing I like to do is I like to make bullet journal spreads for tracking. So kind of like this, where I just wrote, so it's every 500 words, and then every time that I finish one of those 500 word chunks. I get to color in the square. Makes me feel really good. So that worked really well. So trackers in my bullet journal are fun little things to keep me moving, keep me motivated through writing a project. The other thing I like to do is just write dialogue. So I'll just do a back and forth conversation between two characters, and I won't write anything else. And that just kind of helps me move through a scene faster. Okay, question 14 is, do you work on multiple projects at the same time? And the answer to that is yes, except they're usually at different stages. Like I'll be brainstorming a project maybe and writing a different project, just like making notes about the project for future reference if something pops into my brain. Or I'll have maybe one project with beta readers while I'm working on a different project, or I'll have a project with a copy editor. Like right now I'm scheduling copy edits for book 3, and I'm planning on having that happen while I'm writing the first draft of this new novel for National Novel Writing Month. So, like things are moving, but it's never actively writing a first draft for 2 novels at the same time, or at least I haven't yet. I feel like that would be a little bit confusing. One at a time, if I can manage it. Question 15. How often do you research what you're writing? I research a lot, actually, but I usually research in the brainstorming phase and in the editing phase. I try not to research during the writing phase. I know this is a thing that people tell you to do. This is a piece of writing advice that I think people give out a lot, but it seems to really work for me. I've just adopted the way of putting like a placeholder, like XXX, or little brackets or something like that to show that, or highlighting some text to show that it's like I need to go and look it up later. Names always stump me, names of places, names of people. If I haven't thought of the name ahead of time, I could get stuck on it and research it for hours because I want it to be like just the right name with just the right connotation from the right cultural background or the right region. I have to think it all through. So yeah, I mean, I do the research, but I try to do it either ahead of time or after the fact. Right now, I'm doing research, for example, on sci-fi stuff for my sci-fi novel that I'm going to write in November. So I'm listening to a nonfiction book about the future of humanity, which is kind of cool, just to kind of get some ideas about what might be possible, what's definitely not possible, so I'm not going crazy. Question 16 is, how do you organize your projects? Okay, so I'm an organizational nut. I love organizing things and planning things. It is my jam. That said, I am constantly iterating on how I figure out how to plan things. I've had Google spreadsheets. I've had project plans in Asana, if that's how you say that. I've had a whole bunch of different options, like just lists or tasks in my bullet journal or whatever. I've tried a bunch of different stuff. I haven't nailed it yet. When I nail it, I will make a video about it and be like, oh my God, I figured it out. This is how to organize your writing projects, people. Let's do it. Because process planning is actually my thing. It's actually what people used to pay me to do full time for my day job. So, I can't help it. It's what I do. Yeah. Question 17. Do you reward or punish yourself for achieving or missing your writing goals? Sort of. I'm hesitating here and I'm kind of sighing because I am super hard on myself. Real talk. I can beat myself up like nobody's business if I do not feel like I lived up to my expectations, and my expectations are like somewhere way up there. So yeah. But also I've been really, really trying to cut myself some slack too. So I recognize like, oh, hey, you're doing that thing. Maybe we shouldn't do that thing. So I'm working on it. I've tried rewarding myself on the flip side of this question. I've tried rewarding myself. It doesn't work. It's like I'll say, oh, I'll write 500 words and then I'll get a piece of chocolate. And I'm like, I'm just going to eat the piece of chocolate now. That sounds better. So that does not work. The reward is doing the work, I guess. Yeah, I haven't dialed that one in yet either. If you've got the answer to it, let me know. If you're like me and you beat yourself up and you can't figure out how to reward yourself for doing good work, let me know in the comments, please. Chime in, help me out. Question 18. Are there any works similar to your projects that you look for and use for inspiration or comparison? I am always reading sci-fi and fantasy novels, and I find inspiration and comparison in pretty much everything. So yeah, and it's not even just limited to sci-fi and fantasy novels. I'll read a really amazing contemporary romance by like Alyssa Cole, or a really amazing historical romance by Courtney Milan, and be like just amazed, floored, overwhelmed. Like, how did you do this? You are a goddess, and if only I could write like you. So yeah, I mean, that, yes, obviously the answer is yes. But I find it from everything. I find inspiration and comparison in the most unlikely places and the most obvious places, everywhere. But I guess I'll also say, though, I don't actually let it get me down necessarily. I see it as an opportunity to up my game. I am always looking to improve, and I'm always looking for how I can improve, which is why I like looking at craft books. It's why I read so much. I mean, I would read anyway, but it's why I look at the people who I think are doing a really fantastic job and try to figure out how they're doing what they're doing. Question 19. How early do you start looking for and hiring editors? Okay. So right now I have a copy editor. That's the only kind of editor that I'm using right now. I had developmental editors that I've worked with in the past, and I think that I barely even had a first draft done when I was looking for people to help me with it. This is one of those things that I love finding critique partners and mentors and people who can help me, like I said, up my game. I want to know strong writers and work with strong editors who can help me get better. So I'm constantly on the lookout for that stuff. But yeah, right now I am not currently working with a developmental editor, but I do know some that I really highly recommend. So if you're in need of one, let me know. I like to plan. I already said I like to plan. So obviously I start early on that stuff because you got to have a plan. And the folks that you want to work with are going to end up potentially being booked up when you need them. So you got to plan ahead. So yeah, I mean, question 20. How do you feel after writing a first draft? And how do you feel while writing it? Okay, let's see. Since I was just doing this, how did I feel while writing it? Does that phase help? It's such a slog. It's such a slog. Putting words on the page is such a slog. It's a very rewarding slog, and I feel so good when it's done. And here's the thing. I went back today, and I'm reading chapter 1, and I'm reading chapter 2, and I'm editing them, and I feel really good about the work that I did. I'm like, wow, this is not terrible. Or it's not as terrible as I thought it was going to be. Huh. I mean, let's hope the whole novel is like that. Because I don't even remember what I wrote. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's a slog to put words. It's a slog to get words out, but when you're done, it just feels awesome. So yeah, I love holding the finished product and being like, oh my God, I did this. It lasts for about 2 seconds, that feeling, that like, oh, how cool. And I've been making myself pay attention. I've been, if you watch like some of the really earliest videos on this channel where I'm doing the live stream of the book launch of my first book, I've been treating myself to a fancy dessert every time that I launch a book because it's just a way of celebrating. So I go out, I get a fancy dessert, and I try to like enjoy the idea that I've done something pretty amazing. Yeah, anyway, it's weird to link that with food. That may not work for everybody, but for me, it's a special treat. So I like it. It's good. It works for me. Whereas chocolate does not work for rewarding me for writing 500 words, somehow a piece of cobbler does for the whole finished book. I don't know how that works. Okay. This feels like it has been a really long video, so hopefully I can edit this down and make it a little bit better. So I owe you guys a vlog, and that will be up pretty shortly, about how September has been going so far and how my editing has been going. Probably post that before the end of the week. In the meantime, happy writing, and if you want to be notified when I post a new video, be sure to hit the bell and subscribe to my channel. And talk to you later. Bye!